So I'm going to cover levels, using levels here, and also just a little bit more about image adjustment layers. Okay, and we'll get more into those later. So levels are used because they're simple. Frankly, they're pretty easy to understand, and they don't have a lot of complexity that curves, for example, has. Curves is a lot more flexible. So later, here in the coming weeks, when we cover curves adjustment layers, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so in this case, though, especially if speed is of the essence and you want to adjust things quickly, levels works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of my layer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change, oops, that's not what I meant to do, change my layer to a smart object, okay, because again, I want to be able to adjust this. No reason not to anymore. Now, your levels are found underneath Image Adjustment Levels. Okay, that's where all of your, again, all of your image adjustments are found here. Okay, the other one, the command, is Command or Control L. That'll bring up your levels. What levels tells you is where your value information is. So look at just your input. Don't worry about output. Just look at the input levels here. Okay, this arrow is your darks. Okay, if I pull it to the right, it will increase the dark. This arrow is my highlight. Pull that to the left, okay, increase my highlights. And here are my midtones. So I pull them to the right. Okay, it's going to make the midtones darker. To the left, make them lighter. Okay, simple as that. Here's the other thing that levels also has. You notice there are 3 eyedroppers here. Okay, and if you hover over top, it'll tell you. You can set your white point, your gray point, and your black point. So in this case, especially if you were trying to work quickly through things, okay, I can select black point, and I want to pick the darkest part of my image, which is probably like right down about here. Okay. The lightest part of my image, I'm going to go ahead and pick the sky. Yeah. And then my midtones, here's where I want to click around the image a little bit, right? Because if I click here, it's going to make it really, really blue. You notice. If I click here, it's going to make it kind of yellow. Okay. Right about here is a pretty good midtone. Okay, roughly. Now, if you turn your preview on and off, you'll notice, right, that it looks a lot more clear. And before, it had like a real red tint to it. Okay, and that's cleaned it up quite a bit. Okay, it looks a lot better. Now, once I've done this, I can come in and continue to adjust from here. Right, I can make my darks a little bit darker. I could pull my midtones a little lighter, and probably my brights just slightly lighter. And that looks pretty good. All right, remember, you can turn your preview on and off with P. Right. Now, one thing that Levels is not great at is saturation. Okay, so while I could come in and try and play with the saturation here, in Levels, Photoshop lets you do that. It's better to come to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, or Command or Control U. Okay. Now this gives you, again, your adjustments here. By the way, if you want to tint your photographs, you hit Colorize. Okay. This is how you can get like a sepia tone. Okay. Turn that off. If you don't hit Colorize, it's just going to swap your colors around. Okay, so you can make some interesting things. Okay. All I want to do is, you notice the green down here is a little saturated, okay, especially through here. All I'm going to do is drop my saturation, oh, I don't know, 20 points, okay, right? And you'll notice now it's not quite so nuclear. Now, here you also have a lightness, okay, slider. This doesn't work the best in here. I would save that for Levels or something else. Okay. Now you'll notice right here you also have a master where you can come in and select specific colors. So I could come in and take my greens, for example, right? Pull that to the right or completely desaturate it to the left. Okay. You can. I usually adjust the master first, and then I'll come in and play with. Like let's say, for example, I wanted the saturation to be higher in the background. Okay, I could bump my saturation up, then come into my greens and reduce the saturation specifically of my greens. Okay, you'll notice down here, this is your range. This is how much is being adjusted on your greens. So you can actually grab this and it'll change how much information is being changed. Okay, or you can make it narrower. Okay. Right, so Photoshop again will let you control that pretty exactly. Okay. In this case, I'd want to extend the greens a little bit. Okay. And there's my preview on and off. And you notice again, it gets rid of that green cast. You hit OK. All right, so there we go. That looks a lot better than what it did. And just to tell the difference between the two, let me turn off. This is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Okay. All right. So let me talk a little bit about image adjustment layers. Let me go ahead and pull up a new document. So make a new document, color the background however you want. Okay. Make at least 2 new layers, and make 2 objects on your layer. I'm going to do that using the marquee tool, and pick a color that's different than the color in the background and fill it. Okay. On your other layer, again, you can use the marquee tool, or you can paint something. Doesn't matter to me. Okay, and fill that with a different color. And then deselect. Okay, so here we have, there we go, it's a masterpiece. Down at the bottom of your layers palette, as you saw in the other video, you have this little yin-yang symbol. Okay, this creates a new fill or adjustment layer. And if you click on that, it's going to give you a bunch of options. Okay, feel free to play with it as much as you want. In our case, usually, let me tell you what is really useful. It's going to be levels, curves, brightness, contrast, hue, saturation. Those are really probably your biggest ones. So I'm going to go ahead and do a hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay. Now I'm going to pull the saturation to the right. You notice what it does, okay, is that it saturates everything. So let's say, for example, I only wanted to saturate, okay, the rectangle and the circle. Okay. The way I can do that is a couple of different ways. I could Command or Control click on the layer thumbnails, hold down Shift to select both objects. Okay. Click on my layer mask that comes attached automatically to my image adjustment layer. I'm going to invert it with Command Shift I, my selection. Okay. Right, or I can fill it and invert it here, either way. Okay. But you notice, like, look at your layer thumbnail. Right, I want just, pardon me, I want just the black, okay, around my 2 objects. The white is where my image adjustment layer is going to show through. Now, your layer stack matters, because if I pull this layer above it, okay, above my image adjustment layer, it now pulls it out from underneath. So regardless of what the layer mask looks like, it no longer affects it. Now let's say I want to do just the circle or just the square. Okay, you can do that as well. Let me step back. Okay. One of the ways you can do this, again, there are multiple ways to do this. I could, let's say I wanted to affect just my square, right, but I needed my circle underneath. I could make this a clipping mask, and it will clip only to the layer immediately underneath. Okay, so again, it won't affect the ball or the background. Okay. Now, the last way to do this, sometimes it's easier to do. Have both my objects. I'm going to Command click on the thumbnails, hold down Shift to add to my selection, and then make a layer adjustment mask. Okay. Again, hue saturation. Okay, you see how it automatically will make the layer mask for you, and it affects just the objects. Okay. That's up to you entirely. Now the other problem with this is that if I move this, you see what happens? I am moving my adjustment. Okay, so let me turn off auto select. If I come underneath, and you see how I can essentially move it out of where that layer mask is. Okay, so if you are going to move things, you're going to need to move them as a group. So if I select all 3, now I can move all 3 around. Just be aware of that, or you're going to have to add a new layer mask. Okay, again, I'm giving you the options. I know it makes it more complex, but whatever works best for you. Okay, so on this file, what I want to see is you doing adjustments on at least 2 objects, and I want to see either the layer adjustment layer with a layer mask or a clipping mask.